This episode of Misery Hunters is brought to you by Paisley Craft Beer Co. Paisley's craft beer store located in Silk Street in the town centre. There are hundreds of different beers on show for you to take away or even sit in and enjoy. Not only that, St Mirren season ticket holders will get 10% off beer purchases on match days when you present a valid season ticket. That's to take away or sit in as well. You can click and collect via their website www.paisleycraftbeer.com. That's www.paisleycraftbeer.com. Hello, you miserable bastards, and welcome to the Misery Hunters podcast. My name is Jamie Coburn, and joining me today is Mark Jardine.
Hello.
And Andrew Christie.
Hiya.
The others are just not bothered anymore. Like, I don't even know if Ross is alive. When was the last time he was on a podcast?
I think Aberdeen have signed him on a pre-contract.
That's what it is.
He said he'd follow Goodwin whenever he went, so...
That's true. So he's going on the Aberdeen podcast that randomly asked us to follow them back for a DM. We followed them back, didn't DM us, and then unfollowed us. So maybe they listened to a show and went, nah.
Good guys.
So I guess the point that we have to start with is we have a new manager even. And after the amount of complete dross names, which will all be mentioned in this podcast, and maybe even name and shame some of the people who suggested them,
and the dads,
and like the absolute tinfoil hat conspiracy theories that were floated about. It was good to see that Jim Gillespie got his man, and we've got Stephen Robinson in.
It's a handsome, grey-haired, bearded man from the island of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
What's not to like?
And as David Nichol pointed out on Twitter, his assistants get eyes that will give Big Chebs a run for his money. I mean, I'm still on Team Big Chebs, but we'll see.
Is it now Big Dermot instead of Big Chebs? Is that what we're doing?
Big D.
Big D.
Big D. Let's get that one rolling.
Welcome to Misery Hunters After Dark for the Big D hour.
Oh, I'm totally. If I ever meet him, I'm going to get him to just say a link for us. Going to just say a link, say hi, I'm Big D, and you're listening to Misery Hunters.
And you'll never be allowed back in the stadium.
So Stephen Robinson, I think, kind of came out of nowhere. Like we first heard the rumours, like. And then the next thing it was done. After all the names that were, I generally thought we were going to go down the inexperienced sort of gamble route, but it looks like we've got someone who, coming into the position that St Mirren are in, it's a really good appointment.
Yeah, I think I kind of spent the weekend sort of making my peace with the fact that it was going to be between Brown and Naismith, to the point where I was kind of happy with Stephen Naismith, like as the best of a bad bunch, but yeah, Robinson came totally out of left field, and yeah, I think it's a really, really strong appointment. Did a great job at Motherwell before kind of recognising it was time to go. As managers in their kind of third season in Scotland often do, kind of managers maybe have a shelf life in the league, and it was good that he recognised that himself. Managers don't always do that, and yeah, his stats speak for themselves. Him and his assistant Dermot O'Carroll took them to the League Cup final, Scottish final in the same year. Losing both to Celtic, is that right?
Yeah.
And yeah, one thing that I'm really optimistic about is his kind of form for bringing young talent through. Mm-hmm. I think we've obviously got a reputation for having a very good academy at St Mirren, and I don't think we always kind of use it to its maximum. And while at Motherwell, Robinson brought through David Turnbull, Alan Campbell, like Jake Hastie as well. So that could be something kind of going forward that he'll build at St Mirren, because we've got the likes of Dylan Reid at Queen's Park and Kieran Offord. Like, we've got the players there. So if he's got previous for kind of blood and youngsters, I think that just really excited about where it's going to go.
I maybe remember the start of his time at Motherwell inaccurately, and pull me up on it if I do, but I seem to remember him coming in and trying to play quite a pragmatic, tough game, just kind of trying to almost kind of be the hard bastards of the league and kind of try and bulldozer your way through things and stop teams playing against you. And then he was almost forced to bring in Turnbull, as you're saying, Turnbull, Campbell, Scott, Cadden and all the rest. He was kind of forced to play them, and once he knew he had them, he played to their strengths, and they played really good, fast-paced attacking football from what I can remember. I can remember them coming to ours and just destroying us. I think maybe Scott scored twice that night. And they were honestly as impressive a team outside of the big two to have came and played us off the park at home in the last however many years that is. So I think what we're hopefully getting is the Robinson who realised that and then played to his strengths, because I think he'll find once he gets to know the squad here that we've got that same potential in the group, the same level of skill, technique, the same quality, I think, of young players pushing through. We've got guys who I would say under Goodwin, despite some of the plaudits he got that we've maybe not made the most of, that we've not pushed on. You've got Reid coming on in for 5 minutes against Rangers and being the youngest player in the history of the club and league, and then not really getting his chance. Other than that, a couple of starts where he really impressed. I think we'll be talking about the track back and then clearing out that Dundee United player for years. Well, he looked like a very, very cool head in the Celtic game when there was other young players around. I think there's so much potential there, and I don't feel like he should be sitting halfway in the team and halfway out the team at Queen's Park on loan when we've had cause to play, a 34-year-old Ryan Flynn to deputise for people, or we've got Gogic coming off the bench to replace Lee Irwin and whatnot. I think there's spots in that team that I think if we were being a bit more ambitious with what we're doing and what we're trying to build, then we could have made a bit more of guys that were blooded in that Celtic game before Christmas who could be around the squad instead of some of the dead weight, which was obviously going to move on. And I would hope that that's the something that Robinson's kept up on and that he's coming in to coach, and we're going to see that and we'll have the benefit for that.
You mentioned sorry, and I was just going to jump on the point about you mentioned about Dylan Reid. That always kind of confused me, because Goodwin said in many interviews, and I think it was a Q&A night as well, where he said that he was so excited about Dylan Reid, and as soon as he turns age, he's going to be in the first team and he's going to be round about it and this and that, and then it never really amounted to much. And you also mentioned about like Gogic coming on instead of Lee Irwin, when you had a player like Kieran Offord who came in and impressed and then sent straight back out on loan again, and then all of a sudden he's training down at Wigan. Like, I don't know if that will amount to anything or not. But
why is Irwin on the bench at that point?
Yeah.
If you're not going to put him on in favour of a giant Cypriot hard bastard of a midfielder and move things around like that, then why is he taking up a spot on the bench? Why have you not got someone who's going to benefit from the experience of being around the squad, and who, when you're pushed into a situation like that, you might turn to and give a chance? Because he was certainly the standout for me in the Celtic game. Some of the things he was doing, and he scored an absolute rasper for East Stirling at the weekend as well, 25-yarder. He should be doing that in first team training with us and pushing on. I think Jay Henderson's really the only one you would say under Goodwin who's got that chance, who's done well, and who's then been rewarded by being kept in the squad and getting repeated chances. And I just think there's a bit more that we could be taking from the academy than that. And I would hope that the evidence that you saw from Robinson at Fir Park, and he used it to his advantage. It wasn't doing that, bringing those players in, made them a shitload of money when they sold Turnbull in the end and everything else. But also, if you're using academy resources to fill out first team slots, then your budget's going to stretch further. You're going to be able to sign first team ready players in key positions and really focus on building something that's kind of ready to compete and push on and go for top six. All of that potential, I think, is there in Robinson, and he wasn't a name I'd even thought of before he got mentioned on Monday. But now that he's here, I think there's a lot of potential for it to go right, and that's not what I was expecting with some of the names that were floated over the weekend.
No, as soon as that Scott Brown thing came up, I'll admit I shat my pants. I was like, oh, fuck it. Oh no. And then when Stephen Naismith, and you're like, fuck, this isn't. And then as Andrew mentioned there, we're sitting like you're going, if it's out of them two, you go, right, Stephen Naismith, and then you start in your head convincing yourself, well, he was part of the Scotland setup and he has been the youth coach at Hearts, and you know, he did play at Everton, and he all these caps for Scotland, so you know it might. And then as soon as Stephen Robinson appeared, you're like, fuck off.
That's the thing, like I don't deny either of those players kind of their footballing credentials, and I'm sure they will go on to make very good managers if that's the path they want to go down. But my worry was that we were kind of underselling ourselves by bringing in somebody who kind of wants to have a go, and it's just Reece and Munn, just give them that job, they can see what they can do. So yeah, I'm really glad that we've backed ourselves, and it's very strange just being this content with a signing. There's kind of a palpable sense of disappointment in the fan base because we've got nothing to moan about for a wee bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure we'll find something soon when old Stuart Gilmore gets on his LinkedIn again, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, this feels quite a positive. It's been a very positive day, which is odd.
It felt a lot like Kenny Miller getting the Livy job.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, you were so aware that they were just being trotted out to be his apprenticeship, and if you know it obviously didn't work, and you now know it's because Martindale wasn't really an assistant in reality, but. Since then, Kenny Miller's gone over and been an assistant manager in Australia, and he's now back here doing open goal. Like, I think it can very easily go that way. A big name and big experience doesn't, even if that person's someone that's been seen as a dressing room leader, it doesn't necessarily translate. And I think what you were saying was right, Andrew. I wanted us to hire someone with experience, but I'd certainly talked myself into, right, I'd rather we weren't hiring someone that didn't have any, but I would almost rather have had Brown or Naismith than about 90% of the names that were linked with us because of who's available just now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that the pool that we normally swim in is who's recently been binned out of a job but isn't a total write-off, or who has a bit of a connection to the club or a growing reputation and is at a club in Scotland that's part-time and you can convince to move for less than you would have paid for Doug Emery. And I think this is the first time that I know of where we've decided actually, and maybe it was motivated by what we were seeing in the market over the weekend, the first time we've gone, right, who do we want, who can we afford, and let's pay the absolute maximum we can afford to bring them in. And it's someone who's in a job, who's doing, although they're not having a great season, the fact that he got them to that position deserves a lot of credit, and we've gone out and gone, right, he's the guy, he's got the experience we want. And we've signed him. Honestly, if you take people who don't have the experience out, we were staring down the barrel of hiring like Jim McIntyre,
I know,
or Derek Adams, or whatever, just all these toxic no-hopers with awful CVs that you're just putting yourself up there to have them for 18 months and hope you don't get relegated.
I did think, oh shit, I've totally lost my train of thought there. I thought the name Jim McIntyre and Derek Adams has just completely thrown me off because nobody really wants to think about them. But I did laugh at Morecambe fans are all wanting Derek Adams in. when you go through those tweets that just that announce Adams. Yeah, so some of the names like really did give you the fear. Like even like see when Paul Lambert started getting like Paul Lambert, I don't think it's done much. Like I think did he have like a really good spell at Colchester and then he went to like Norwich.
He was the Colchester manager and they turned Norwich over 7-1 and then Norwich hired him like the week after.
Yeah. And then
that Norwich team, I, from what I remember, played really good football and kind of rose up. That's when they started to rise up the divisions again and kind of push on. But I don't think it ended well and I don't think he's done anything since. Was he not at Ipswich or something before and they were dog meat?
Yeah, Aston Villa he was rotten with, and even his spell in Scotland, was it Livingston he was manager of? He didn't.
That was one of his first jobs way back when, and he was an absolute write-off. I think he kind of got laughed out.
So it's crazy that he'll still get jotted out for these jobs, but that's the kind of managers that people were bringing up. It was just
anyone with like Mark was saying, anyone with any connection to the club. Like I saw Stephen McGarry's name as well, which obviously an absolute legend, but was it not for his connection to the club? I don't know if he'd necessarily been mentioned in the job.
The amount of people who were spitting feathers about Scott Brown and Stephen Naismith not having enough experience to even be linked with a job, and Stephen McGarry being linked with a job off the back of a spell as the assistant manager for a team in a league with no relegation, and the fact he runs a youth club. Like, there's no disrespect from me. Sorry, there's no disrespect from me towards Stephen McGarry at all. I think, by all indications, doing a great job. Very popular. The level in Australia is better than I think a lot of us think it is. But put yourself in, like, if he was in Wales, right? If he was the new Saints assistant manager, and because he'd played up here, would people really be shouting on the back of his experience to get him up the road and get him in? I think that one was wishful thinking from people who want him back as opposed to back him.
Absolutely mental from himself as well if he wanted to leave Australia to come back here. Like,
yeah, madness.
And again, I wouldn't have took him as manager. And that's me even saying when I was in Australia, he got me comp tickets for Alessandro Del Piero's game from Sydney against Perth Glory, which was like Del Piero's 500th league appearance of all time kind of thing. And it was a very frustrating game to watch, and I really didn't like the experience because Australian people see when we make fun of Americans watching soccer, Australians are worse.
I mean, Stephen McGarry and Alessandro Del Piero in the same sentence has just blown 8-year-old me's mind, so I might need to just take a wee minute. That's incredible.
do you want me to blow your mind even more?
He might go on. Sorry.
See, I've got like IPTV, and my girlfriend's Italian, so she watches Italian TV. See the amount of like ex-footballers that appear in adverts, including Alessandro Del Piero appears in a water advert with a singing animated bird.
What's with this?
And that's what we're missing out on here.
Zlatan's the voice of Sky, and Totti and his wife are in an advert for something I can't remember, washing powder or some shit like that. But
we're needing John Spencer and Craig Burley to show up here in adverts for cereal.
Yeah, we need more ex-Scottish footballers just in adverts, just randomly, like fucking Highland Spring with Ross Tokley or something like that. We should mention the fact that Goodwin has now officially left, because I think we were just talking about it slightly in the last podcast. It wasn't official yet. I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't really released a statement or anything that said about his time at St Mirren. I know he did was then forced to on an interview question where he said, I was kind of disappointed in that. And also Aberdeen absolutely teasing us with that amazing slow motion video of him as he arrived in that suit. I felt very sad.
He had that one answer where, as you're saying, Jamie, I think he was pitch side, and he went, it was tough to leave there, and I've got a great connection to the club and a lot of great memories and all that, and then nothing else.
He said it was his dream to manage a team like Aberdeen. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
This is
it was his dream to manage a team like Aberdeen next. And now he'll be having dreams about managing a team which is the next level up, which is, I don't know.
Celtic, that's his aim, innit?
Sheffield Wednesday. Bristol City.
Morecambe,
yeah. They look for a manager.
And then we'll come in and rip the release fee and get him back in.
Yeah.
So it was good to see a team under Jim Goodwin take a lead, not really do anything, get sucker punched, draw, and get sent back home down the road, and for it not to be us. That was enjoyable.
And earlier when I lost my train of thought, I just remembered what it was, and I was going to say the fact that we got £250,000 for Goodwin, and we only spent 100,000 of that bringing in Robinson. It still puts another extra £150,000 into the club coffers. Obviously, that won't all go to playing budget. There'll be elsewhere that will get allocated and stuff. But it showed how St Mirren have never been this good at business.
Once our overlords have taken 120 grand out of that for new carpets and wallpaper, it still leaves enough money for us to pay someone like £700 a week for the rest of the year. So it's a big bonus. Notice how I said our overlords,
yes.
and warded off any potential legal challenge.
I think it will be. Do we go to Pittodrie again before the split? We don't, do we?
I think we've been to Pittodrie twice this year.
Aye. So the only way we'll get them again is if we're in the same half of the table.
Which we
at this
won't be,
point is an if.
Yeah, they'll be playing Dundee and Livy and County, and we'll be
looking at our passports.
We'll be at Parker's.
If we don't get Europe, I'd be so happy if Aberdeen finish in the bottom 6 and we get a European spot. It would be tremendous. And
how long do we need to wait with Aberdeen not winning games before we start calling him Jim Glasswin?
Speaking of ex-managers, I saw Jack Ross was being another snake again, where the fact was we went for him. There was rumours, I heard some rumours that he actually was interested and then decided, nah, didn't want it again.
I don't think he was ever interested.
Yeah, he's a snake though, isn't he?
I think he flashed a bit of skirt. We came running. His agent probably briefed that he was willing to be approached.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was ever going to happen.
Surely he's holding out for a job down south, isn't surely?
I can't imagine him.
He's still in Northumberland, is it? So that would have been a commute and a half. So
I didn't realise he was still staying down there.
I think he might have been when he was at Hibs as well. Maybe I've read something wrong, but
he's probably still getting paid off by Sunderland.
Yeah,
I heard he's still getting paid off by Hibs. I don't. This was on Twitter. Take that with a pinch of salt. Like there was a lot that could have been from the same person that was talking shit about the kibble and all.
Is he the new Davy Moyes? Is he just still in new jobs and still within the years of other contracts, just living off past glories?
That Sunderland Netflix money.
He gets residuals every time someone comes in drunk and puts it back on for a laugh.
Just for that theme song. Absolute belter.
Do you think he ever wakes up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat thinking of conversations he had with Charlie Methven about the sound system?
God. Is there a new season of that coming soon? I hope so.
I hope so.
I think with Ross, I definitely opened myself back up to the possibility of him getting back in, and I was never among the most vitriolic kind of snake callers when it came to Ross anyway. But
you went down and watched him.
I'm so done now. Yeah, well, it was a day out. It was a day out, wasn't it?
It's a coincidence. I just happened to be in the area. But yeah, when all those names were getting tossed about, that's when I was like, fuck, right, I'm willing to forgive Jack Ross. Adam,
there was a point
in which
he was the best candidate by far, and I was thinking, well, we're going to have to delete a lot of tweets.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have taken him in a heartbeat, but whether it was just kind of tabloid shite rather than any real chance of it happening, because obviously if it's him that's rejected us rather than the other way around, so I'm sure he'll get himself another job down south soon enough.
That's a good reminder, Andrew. Cheers. I'm going to go search my Twitter account and Robinson and see if there's anything that I should be taking away.
But the worry is you referred to him as something else, isn't it? Some pun. So yeah, I'll have to have a rethink. See how
PTF blog and handsome.
Yeah.
At PTF blog and grey Northern Irish Lanark-based ball bag.
Before we move on, I will mention that Sam did ask us to include that he thinks Robinson is a better human being and manager than Goodwin. So,
I think in many ways it could be seen an upgrade on Goodwin. To be honest, I think you were talking about his first season at Motherwell, Mark, and I think they're very similar managers where they spent their first period of time at the club kind of consolidating and making them hard to beat. And I think Robinson will make Curtis Main a 30 goal a year striker now, so let's just wait for that to happen.
He did sign him at Motherwell.
Yeah. So did he sell him as well, or was that after his time?
Oh, see if he bought him and sold him. That's great because I
think disappointingly Main signed a pre-contract.
Oh.
At Aberdeen. Disappointed, but I'm sure that was while he was there. I'm sure he came in and he had 1 or 2 good seasons, and then took the move.
Final turn Charles Dunn into a 30 goal a season striker then.
I find that more believable.
As long as we get a rap, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It definitely did sell on more than just that. Sorry, Jimmy. It definitely did sell on more than just Turnbull. I'm sure Kipre went for
he went for $1 million.
for reasonable money. Yeah. So you would hope that even just that kind of attitude, it very much seems like someone who has his guys. He knows who he can depend on. He did a bit of the kind of John Hughes at Wraith when he was coming to the end of his time at Motherwell and torched a lot of guys he'd signed that year and said, we're a team that are battling. I saved the quote somewhere. I said we're a team that are battling just now, but we've maybe only got 7 or 8 players in that first team squad who are giving everything for the shirt. So I think he's a guy who very quickly will work out who properly runs themselves into the ground for him. And I'm not going to name any players in our current squad who I would expect to fall foul of that. But we might be looking for a new left-footed central midfielder at some point, based purely on attitude and how Robinson seems to manage. But I think once you've got that, then he'll trust those guys and he'll push them on. He'll convince them to sign longer-term deals because they're his guys. And if they do well enough, then he's not too proud to sell them and try and use the money to do something else. So all of these are. I don't want to ignore the negatives. There's the same chance he can disenfranchise other guys who could have done something. And, it's not a guarantee that it's going to work. But I think there's a lot of positives there that we maybe haven't had with other managers recently.
It'd be interesting to see as well. Obviously, we've got Jack Annick out of contract in the summer, and
Aberdeen's Jack Annick.
Yeah, which I think we're all pretty aware that that's the outcome that's going to happen.
Has to be.
Robinson actually signed Mark Gillespie, and obviously Gillespie's now at Newcastle is like their number 3 choice goalkeeper. But with what's happening at Newcastle, the thing he might be getting put down that pecking order again. Possible loan move until his contract's out. He's picking up a big wage packet that I'm sure Newcastle would be happy to absorb because in the scale of Newcastle it's a small wage packet. That could be a choice of a goalkeeper coming back. I wouldn't mind Gillespie if he was to use those links of players that he's had before.
Would he have been the one that signed Carson as well then?
Oh, that's a good point.
Because if that's certainly a pedigree of sourcing and then attracting good goalkeepers. Which again we've been very lucky with Goodwin and I guess Cooney before that we've been able to bring good keepers in and hold on to them. So
although
we've got someone that can do the same.
I'm under the belief that neither of them were to do with the goalkeepers, and it was actually more from Jamie Langfield. So it's good to see if Jamie Langfield's still at the club that he can still keep that recruitment, because I know he was the person who alerted Kearney to, or the club at least, to Ladke. And I would like to think that means he was probably involved in scouting and getting Anakin.
Yeah.
So if he
so happy that Langfield's staying.
Yeah, I think it's
How much fun was it seeing him on Saturday in Livy? Just
buzzing.
It's cracking,
I saw he put on Twitter earlier today that he's retired with a 100% no loss record.
Yeah.
In management, that's fantastic.
Do you see the Terrace tweet the picture of him as well with the pigeon in the background?
Pigeon,
But we will move on from the managerial chat and we'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Eamon Brophy. You're listening to Misery Hunters podcast.
Thanks, Eamon. And while we'll talk about him very soon, we would need to talk about the match that Jamie Langfield actually managed and got as a 1-1 result. We did say in the previous podcast that we would happily take a point at Livingston. It's a hard place to go to. I was working and couldn't find a stream to watch it. Mark was in a travel jet lag haze of fart.
I was on another planet.
So
we'll go to our match correspondent, Andrew Christie.
Yep, sorry guys. I mean, you have to kind of start any chat about a game in Livingston. You have to kind of roll out all the usual cliches of it being just a hard place to go. Football doesn't really happen in the same way anywhere else in the world as it does in Livy. And 1 each beforehand, with the disruption that happened during the week, a 1 each draw I would have probably taken beforehand. And coupled with the fact that I don't think we played well at all, I would have to put it down as a pretty good afternoon. And I guess playing shite and getting a draw is better than playing well and losing, but not quite as good as playing well and winning. But I've tied myself in a knot with that amazing analogy there. But we kind of toiled a bit and it's never really got going, and I was actually quite impressed with Livingston, particularly Nubley and Devlin on their right seemed to give us a lot of trouble. I think while Jordan Jones wasn't brought in for his defensive work, I think he was kind of cut out a few times, particularly for the goal as well. That came from Nubley and Devlin kind of getting the better of them on our left, and I think in the end the ball ricochets off Anderson's elbow or something. It was a kind of scrappy, just lucky goal to concede, but you can't really say that they weren't good for it at that point. I think one thing I was happy to see Scott Tanser come back. In the past, I've been quite kind of critical of his sort of quantity over quality approach to crossing the ball, but we did look a lot more exciting when he came on, a lot more inventive. Richard Tate's obviously been very good back in that left back role, but it gives us that option for Tanser and Ronan to play. I think there's a lot of defences in the league that will really struggle against Jones and Tanser when they're both kind of on song. And the goal again comes from a couple of scrappy mistakes, and Kiltie does well to kind of bundle it in. And again, there's not a lot to talk about the football wise. I think, well, again, it's something we always talk about, but Willie Collum was again just on one. He was just very, very keen to make the day about Willie Collum, and we don't really want to get into the usual sort of Willie bashing, as it were, but it was terrible. You could see where we were sat, we were just kind of on the just on the halfway line pretty much, and there were so many times where there was a foul and you'd see him running towards his linesman with these terrified eyes, just hoping his linesman was going to bail him out, because he's like, I don't have a clue what just happened. And so Charles Dunn's red card, for example, is a great example of that, where I think his challenge on Bruce Anderson earlier on in the game, I think, was he to get a red for that? I don't think we could kind of complain too much. It was maybe on the harsh side, but he does sort of stiff arm Anderson in the jaw. So you kind of think Collum had that in his mind, and as soon as, was it Soto, kind of threw himself down with very, very minimal contact from Dunn, Collum he was in his pocket straight away, just making up as he goes along. And I don't think his refereeing kind of benefited any team more than the other. It was more a case of just stopping football from happening, really. And it's just one of those ones. We're really happy to get up the road with a point. And we said last week, 4 points from Saturday and tomorrow in Dundee would be a pretty successful week. So I think keeping that unbeaten run going while managerless on Saturday will do a lot for the confidence, and with the bounce of the new manager and that kind of general good feeling now in the place, hopefully we can build on that and get something from tomorrow, because it's a big opportunity to, I think, if we go a point off fourth, no, a point off fourth now, we go 2 points clear in fourth, so it's a massive opportunity to kind of put that marker down in the top half. And I know our record against Dundee's not great this season. The game we played against them at our bit is as bad as we've been for a long, long time. And obviously the opening day of the season was a 2-way draw. I think you kind of hope the mistakes we made in the first game in that 3-5-2 will be fixed by this new formation and the way we're playing under that. So hopefully we can get something from tomorrow and kind of start looking at the table and just pick out where we want to go in Europe, basically.
I think I can only go by what I've read and the stats I've seen and the highlights I've watched, but it looked like David Martindale had every right to be annoyed at the end of that one. I think if I was a Livy fan, and thank God I'm not, that would have been a game that had got away. I would have come away from that annoyed at what I'd watched and thinking, I hope that's not 2 points that we need later in the season, whereas I think we are probably looking at it as we could well have just walked away with nothing.
Yeah, it's a game we've seen from the other side countless times over the past couple of seasons, so yeah.
And absolutely. It's almost a bonus point when you've played like that.
Yeah.
And got it back and putting all the uncertainty as well about Goodwin and all the rest of it, the fact we're still playing, regardless of how well Alex Grieve has done and played above expectations, we're playing without any of the kind of recognised full-time professional strikers at the club that we had prior to Christmas and everything else. A point's no bad thing, even if we maybe didn't fully deserve it. When you look at the game on balance, I think having briefly watched the two incidents with Dunn, I think the first one you could certainly, as you were saying, Andrew, make a very good case for that being a red card. I think it's not as if he's gone and taken him out with the point of his elbow, or he's thrown one out. He's not Ben Thatchered him into the advertising hoardings or anything like that. But he knows what he's doing. It's a stiff arm. It definitely makes contact with his jaw. I think McFadden on Sports Scene said you can see his jaw swing when he makes contact with him in the replay. I think he's that could have gone the other way and you couldn't have really complained. The one he's been sent off for is an absolute farce. You can see maybe from some angles how it looks much worse than it is. He's definitely thrown his arm back, but he's thrown his elbow back in front of who is it? He touched it again. Soto. Yeah. He throws it back and his elbow passes like in front of his face, and it's almost as if on the way past they just kind of jazz hands him.
Yeah, his eyes are also never off the ball as well, which it's just that I think it's a pretty bizarre.
It almost looks like a stage punch, that way where you like from a certain angle you throw that punch like 3 centimeters in front of someone's face and they clap as it goes past, and it's like perfectly looks as if from one spot as if you've punched them. I think from where Collum's standing, and that's being generous, but certainly from where the camera is, if you're not really paying attention, it looks like he's absolutely mangled him.
Yeah, but I guess Soto's reaction as well probably made it look maybe if. Actually, I don't want to give Collum a way out, to be honest.
No. He should be wise to that. He shouldn't go by a player's reaction to that kind of thing. He needs to go by what he's actually seen, and he obviously didn't actually see an elbow there because it didn't happen.
I think that kind of, like, you're not defending Collum there. Collum's that shit of a referee that if there's a benefit of doubt, he has to go for it because he's that unsure himself. So he's just seen a player go down. The guy's arm was near his face and he's went down. He's probably missed it and just went, "Oh God, I'm either made a big mistake here. I better just send them off because whatever." I think that's what's happened, and so you're not defending them at all. We're continuing on the, as you said, Willie Bashing.
It blows my mind that he is seen as the kind of peak of our referees. Mm-hmm. In this country. I don't think we're blessed with spectacularly good referees. I think on balance they're not great, but I recognise how tough a job it is to do. I'm not a zealot about that kind of thing. But Collum is by no metric the best referee in our league. In no respect, in no regard. I don't understand how he's the one that gets European games and gets put up for internationals and all the rest of it, because he is comfortably of the. If he's refereeing a week in the top flight, of the 6 referees that are refereeing, he will be the worst. Mm-hmm. He's the one I least want to get, and that includes the new guys. That includes the guys that get touted up and you're like, I've not seen that guy's name before. He was definitely refereeing the juniors last week. They're better than Collum.
You would think, like, you always hear, like, maybe if referees were full-time and stuff like that, but surely, like, just an independent sort of panel within the SFA that can watch their performances, give them a rating, and then see if they're not doing well, put them down the leagues. Like, obviously that might be a bit unfair on them, but on the teams down in those leagues, but it's the only way we're ever going to, like, because if a club comes out and says that refereeing performance wasn't good enough, like, all of a sudden we get into trouble for it. The referee gets away scot-free. Like, we're the ones with the fine, or like the manager comes out and says it, he'll get fined, or like there's always a punishment for the club and not the referee. And if we start actually like saying, look, actually you weren't good enough and you've dropped down almost like within a league table of referees with ratings and stuff like that, that's the only way I think we'd ever improve it.
I don't disagree with it. I think that there has to be something. It feels like for the last decade, he's been the one that you're supposed to be grateful to get because he's a FIFA accredited A-star referee. You should be grateful for getting the cream of the crop to come and referee your game, and I haven't seen him have a good game that we've been involved in, or I've not seen him have a good game on the telly or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a St Mirren point. I just don't think he's good enough. I would almost rather, as long as the game wasn't against Rangers or someone like Rangers, such as Hearts, I wouldn't mind having Andrew Dallas. Honestly, I would rather have Andrew Dallas as a referee over Willie Collum, with the caveat that that game can't include Rangers or Hearts.
Does that go
or Kilmarnock
for John Beaton, or just no John Beaton at all either?
Brother Beaton can be Andrew Dallas's linesman.
We will move on to the game tomorrow night, or tonight, depends what time you're listening this in, or the game that's just been.
Get that to fuck.
Yeah, Mark McGee back at Dundee. Well, not really, because
sort of.
Still suspended.
He'll be there.
He'll be in the stands.
He'll be as close to the game as I will.
I just hope someone in the stands sitting near him gets the phone out. Just starts recording.
Yeah.
Like a red rat.
Films on his stupid wee desktop computer.
This is I see a 6-pointer of our season. This is a game that will define, I think, our season if we're actually going to challenge for a European spot or top 6 spot at the very least, or whether we're going to, just float about there and be like, oh, we nearly done it again kind of thing. I mean, I want us to be top 6 because then we can get those Tony Says Top 6 t-shirts back on the website.
I think we're close enough now to it happening that we could start to sell them.
I don't know. People bought them last time and then we did. So at least these people could get some usage out of those t-shirts as well. But we've got Eamon Brophy back. Obviously, I don't think he goes straight into that team. Even if he was 100% fit, you wouldn't put him straight in because Alex Greaves been doing so well. But you're going to say he's just back from injury. He's only had one day training, probably train a wee bit tomorrow morning as well. He's not going to. I see him maybe coming off the bench after Greaves got his hat trick. That's only where we're due.
Just to get Greaves' standing ovation as he walks off the pitch after scoring his goal.
Yeah, and then it's just on Eamon to see how many he can score in the time he's got left.
I want him to.
But I think, bringing Eamon Brophy on kind of maybe 70 minutes, and with the way that Greaves plays, the Dundee United centre backs, they're not the most mobile. They'll know Dundee. I saw Mark's face there. Dundee centre backs.
Did you get a job for Sky Sports?
I know, yeah. Hearts badge up and everything. The Dundee centre backs, they're not the most mobile. The way that Greaves plays, they'll know they've been in a game, and bringing Brophy on 70 minutes in just to stretch that, I think that would be a good avenue to kind of go down. But hopefully by that point in the game it'll be moot. The game will be out of sight and it'll just be a case of racking up the goals. But yeah, you never know.
There was a few things that really frustrated me the last time, when we played Dundee at ours. And one was playing against two plodder centre halves and just launching the ball at them repeatedly and expecting a smallish striker to get change out of that. It's just never going to happen. So I would hope that the way we've been playing and what Robinson will have been made aware of already is that's not our strength, and it's certainly Dundee's weakness, that we should be getting Greaves in behind them. We should be using Jones to tie them in knots and to get in behind and do that.
The fact we've got Jones and Kelty's on the, we're seeing how good a player he actually can be for us at the moment. It would be one of the most ridiculous decisions to just start punting the ball and bypassing that. I know it'd be very similar if we did, but I'm hoping that we don't. Greaves, he's going to come in. You know what he's going to do, and he's going to draw those fouls off the Dundee defenders. He'll draw it off the Dundee midfield as well. He's just going to get in about it. He's going to wind folk up. He's going to win free kicks, and then we just have to kind of make sure we take advantage of that. But this game, I am confident, but I do still have that slight shit.
Yeah, the other thing that annoyed me when we played them, which is where I think we would be in trouble earlier in the season, is that they got so much space just outside of our box, where they're frankly immobile creative unit of Adam and McGowan and whoever else that is that gets called up to play. Obviously their front line's a bit different than the last time. we were speaking about them. They were given so much space when they were doing nothing to earn it. You're not going to get that off a team that's got Gogic and Power in there holding their line and just being kind of flat track bullies, you would hope, against who they're up against. I think Adam's also out for this one as well, which I think, honestly, if you play correctly against them, I think it's a hindrance. I'd rather a slow, bald Charlie Adam was in there, being very bald and slow.
I think as well, particularly in the first game at Dens, they seemed to get a bit of luck in the wide areas as well. I remember, I think it was maybe their second goal where it was Jay Henderson get caught out. Kind of no criticism of him. That's not the player he is. But yeah, you kind of hope that the new system we're playing with the four at the back will stop that, and it'll just be a case of Gogic and Power mopping up what does come their way through the middle. And yeah, it's weird going into a game confident as a St Mirren fan, because we've been around long enough to know that doesn't always end well, but you'd think we should have enough to kind of see it over the line. But yeah, it's definitely a game there for the taking, so it's just a case of how we kind of stand up to it.
Ideal situation for me would be the fact that I have triple captain Greg Kilty on this double game week. He's already got me a lot of points for that goal. For him to assist Alex Grieve on his hat-trick, all three of them. Alex Grieve to celebrate up at this, run over to the dugout. Someone throws him an electric shaver, and he just runs over to Paul McGowan, puts that fucking hair out of his misery.
There's some of the old short back in Graves.
That would be a very merry Cinchmas.
Look, speaking as somebody who doesn't have any hair anymore, you hang on to it as long as you can. I understand where he's coming from, the poor guy.
I give you enough credit, Andrew, that if you had a hair island like Paul McGowan just sitting out there adrift, that you wouldn't be back combing it.
I think Craig, our other resident baldy, I think he would have a hair island if he let it grow. Maybe we should.
But he doesn't. That's the point. So he deserves credit for that. And also, just in case you think I'm being in any way discriminatory, Charlie Adam's also fat, and I'm fat, so it's fine. Like we can talk about all of these things.
And then we've also got Hearts at the weekend. Another tough match.
Naismith's boys.
Naismith's boys. It would be glorious to go on and win that as well.
It would, because they've not looked great the past couple of games. But I read yesterday that Gordon, Halkett, and Boyce are all likely to come back on Saturday, which does kind of give me the fear a wee bit. But we've got them twice in fairly quick succession, with the quarter final of the cup coming up at the start of March. So,
what would you rather win, this game or the cup?
Cup,
yeah.
Saturday night in Gorgie.
Games against teams already in the top six aren't going to decide whether or not we get in the top six.
I mean,
but it would still be nice
if we win tomorrow and then we beat Hearts, we wouldn't be that far behind them. We'd be 4 points behind them in third place.
Jamie,
Have I jinxed it? Nah.
Jamie. You've not jinxed it unless you put on a t-shirt.
There's no t-shirts, don't worry. No.
Tony says, Viva Europe.
Well, at the start of the year, I said to my Hearts fan pal, shout out Neil, that St Mirren would finish above Hearts in the league. So we could just get that message printed on a t-shirt when we finally do, and just put Neil's face next to it. And I don't know. I know I've not been here long enough to start suggesting t-shirts, but I'd buy one.
You said shout out. Are you telling me Hearts fans listen to this podcast?
Nah, right enough.
If we were to make that t-shirt and you were to buy one, it would put it on par for sales with some of our other t-shirts.
That's true. But yeah, anyone else want to touch on anything of them before? No.
I think that's it.
Cool.
I'll go back to a game at some point.
Europe, here we come.
I will mention, we don't want you to listen to other podcasts, but we are appearing on a couple within the next weeks or so. Sam, who obviously hasn't been here or the last one, he will be going on. Is it the Football Daft podcast?
Grado and Shouts at Bob.
Shouts at Bob and Chris Toll. And me and Mark will be appearing on a couple of the Terrace podcasts, but I think they're Patreon, so you need to pay to listen to us. But I mean, it's worth it.
Sam drops his knickers for anyone that asks, whereas I insist on only appearing on podcasts other than this that are behind paywalls.
Don't worry, guys. I'll give you my password. Don't worry, I'll get you in.
I mean, I'm hoping the guys for the Terrace don't listen to this, but I used to I was a Patreon and I used to download it and send it to Craig. So
you're talking yourself like that podcast and stuff like.
I paid a $5 to listen to myself talk last time, so hopefully that hasn't expired by the time this next one rolls around.
Miseryhunters.co.uk, you will find Andrew's blog on there. It's always worth, I was going to say listening to, but reading.
Yeah, there's one incoming this week, which may or may not be written in the car on the way back from Dundee tomorrow night. So I just know that it was how I suffered through extreme travel sickness to get this blog to you.
Stay tuned for a blog title that's better than the title that this podcast gets.
And you can also buy our merch on there. Keep your eyes peeled. We do have a new t-shirt getting designed in the making. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm absolutely buzzing for that t-shirt.
Buzzing, mate. And I may as well plug myself on this as well. PaisleyCraftBeer.com. Get on it. Click and collects. Great beer on there. You won't find it in any other shop in Paisley. And it pains me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Fuck Jim Goodwin.
Fuck Jack Ross.
Fuck Reading interim coach Alex Ray. We're finally rid of him for a bit.